This week, we give our first impressions of the 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee, discuss the all-new Nissan Z, and which member of the Toyota RAV4 family is the best choice for a driving enthusiast. Find out next on Talking Cars. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Alex Nizick.
And I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
So we're going to start off this week's show circling back to a topic we discussed on last week's episode, which was number 321, and that was our forever car. It was the car we would choose if we could only live with one car for the rest of our lives. And apparently that resonated with you folks because we got a whole bunch of comments in, people telling us about what their forever car would be. And so we're going to take a little bit and talk about those. Remember, the best place to send any questions or comments that's Talking Cars related is talkingcars@icloud.com. So let's just take a minute and read through some of these responses from you guys because we love getting them and hearing about what your forever car was. Let's start with Donald. Donald says, for my forever car, I've always been a Honda lover, and the one Honda model that I've always wanted ever since I was a teen is the 1988 to 1991 Honda CRX SI. I admit it wasn't the fastest car out there, but it was fun to drive, very nimble, had one of the best manual transmissions out there, and still very fuel efficient. John says, money and reliability issues aside, my forever vehicle would be a 2020 Mercedes AMG E63 S-Wagon. I can see both of you guys shaking your heads to that.
I mean, fast wagon, come on.
Yeah,
can't go wrong.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
an awesome car.
Will says, Alpine A110. And for those of you who may not know what an Alpine A110 was, it was a French sports car that was produced in the 60s and 70s. And for me, that's one of those cars that, man, if I could ever get the chance to drive one, I would go for it in a heartbeat. So, Will, I hope you get your forever car. Tommy says, my forever car is a 1994, 1995 Porsche 928 GTS 5-speed, and I'm 100% on board. That was the final version of the 928. It had a 5.4 liter V8 with 345 horsepower. I've always wanted one of those cars. Ryan, you have a 928 story as well?
Yeah, well, I have a story. A good friend of mine growing up, after we graduated high school, he always had nice cars. I don't know how the heck he got them, but he always had nice cars. And he ended up with a GTS. And we at the time we were doing a lot of autocrossing. So I had my BMW 98 3 Series, E36, and he would take that, and at the end of the autocross day, you could do fun laps, and he would let me drive the 928, and my goodness, was it a blast! Like, just tons of power. I didn't fit in it that well, so like I was always struggling to steer it because it was always sideways the whole time. But what a blast! And the shift pattern was actually first gear was back.
Like and then, down and
yeah. It was backwards, or not. It's not backwards, but it's just first gear was back. And oh my god, that was a fun car. It taught me a few things.
That car was it was supposed to replace the 911 when they developed it.
Exactly,
and then people wanted the 911, so it never happened. But that was the original plan.
Yeah,
that's a cool car. Absolutely, 100% true. Ryan, I'm so glad you at least got to drive one. Any chance your buddy still has that car?
He doesn't.
Maybe I can buy it off of him.
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
He doesn't.
Okay. I probably couldn't afford it anyway. All right. Another person says, I would drive a 2013 to 2017 Lexus LS 460 for the rest of my life. That car is amazing to me.
That's a comfortable car.
Yeah, can't really argue that.
Yep. And then we have two here that are related. This person says, I already own my forever car, my 2004 Toyota Matrix XR. It does everything I need, and I hope it lasts forever. And another comment is, my forever car is my 2005 front-wheel drive manual Pontiac Vibe. After 16 years, it runs as well as the day it left the factory. And, of course, if you don't know, those cars were related. Basically, that was some badge engineering, kind of along the lines of, what we talked about last episode, the Subaru BRZ and the Toyota GR86. Christine says, if CR is essentially giving it to me and maintaining it, Porsche Macan, in the real world, one of the hybrid CUVs, probably a Hyundai Tucson. And so the giving her part, I blame that on Jen Stockberger. She was the host last week, and she sort of implied a little bit. I don't think she meant to, but she sort of at one point said, and we'll give it to you. She really meant we'll give it to you, meaning, you can choose a car that even has bad reliability and blah, blah, blah. But folks, I'm sorry to let you know, we're not buying these forever cars for you. They're not even buying forever cars for us. So we're a nonprofit organization. We can't afford to do that. But nice try, Christine.
Macan's awesome, though. That's a good choice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then JRS says Datsun 240Z and 280Z. Oh, heck yeah. The original Datsun Zs.
Awesome.
JRS, stay tuned because we're going to have some more Z-related stuff later on in the show. And then last one, Nick says 1993 Saab 900T.
That's a classic.
Always a soft spot in my heart for old Saabs. Well, now any Saab, because they're all old.
True.
They're not around anymore.
R.I.P.
Okay, that was fun. And thanks again, folks, for all of your great comments. We love hearing about all the different cars that you guys would love to spend the rest of your life with. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about something that's not quite as fun, actually not fun at all, and that's the ongoing saga of the Chevrolet Bolt EV fire risk issue. We've reported on it before, and now Chevy has expanded the recall to include all Bolts from the 2017 to 2022 model years. This includes even the brand new Bolt EUV that we've discussed on the podcast, and that now puts the number of Bolts recalled at 110,000. Chevy is directing all Bolt and Bolt EUV owners to park their vehicle outside, away from structures, and don't charge it overnight. So the issue that's going on is there's 2 defects found in the battery cell. You can read more about this at consumerreports.org. We have a full story on it. Alex, is there, obviously this is a terrible issue. It's a real bummer, especially because EVs are emerging and, we're trying to get them more popular with consumers. But is there a little bit of a silver lining to this not so great story?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's good to try to find the silver lining in this type of stuff. But first of all, it draws attention to this issue, right? So hopefully it just becomes less of an issue with EVs in the future, and hopefully it doesn't discourage people. But the other thing is that I was thinking about, the Bolt's been around for a little while. So there are owners out there that probably have a decent amount of miles and charges on their original Bolt's battery. So if GM's replacing all these batteries, those owners get fresh new batteries in their Bolts that it's going to keep those cars, kind of refreshes them altogether, which is pretty nice, at least for those owners. So
that's a great point.
Oh.
All right. Let's move on to talk about the all-new 2023 Nissan Z that was just revealed. This was one of those cars that was going to be revealed at the New York Auto Show, which has now been, canceled for 2021. So that's not happening. But we still now have a lot more information on the Z. We've seen real pictures of it. Alex, give us a brief overview of this long-awaited all-new Z.
Yeah, the new Z, it looks awesome. They redesigned it, so 2023, like you said. A ton of kind of retro design cues on it. So it looks like it borrows from each, generation of the car in the past, particularly those Z32 taillights look amazing. And it's, so they increased the power to 400 horsepower out of the V6 that comes previously used in an Infiniti model.
Look how excited Ryan is.
I wasn't that excited until I heard about the power plant. So
yeah, 6-speed manual.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
Yeah, so that's going to be awesome. And so they reworked the 370Z platform, and that sounds a little like, oh boy, at first it's not going to be that great. But if the new Frontier, the Nissan Frontier that we kind of got a taste of, is any indication, I think Nissan shows that they can do a pretty good job of extracting everything out of an existing platform. So yeah, there's some carryover stuff, but I think it might be pretty great, especially they say it's going to start at like 40K. So, come on.
Yeah, this is exciting because, we just not that long ago tested the Toyota Supra, and to me, this is a direct competitor, right? They're kind of similar era cars in a sense. They've been around forever, but a 3.5, or I'm sorry, it's a 3.5 liter, correct?
It's a 3-liter twin turbo 400 horsepower V6, and that's the standard engine.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of fun. The previous 370Z was just a naturally aspirated motor, and it just didn't have that much. I mean, it was okay. It was a good car, but it was not that enticing. This sounds like it's going to be a real blast. I mean, right?
Right. Yeah. The option of either a 6-speed manual or a 9-speed automatic. Of course, it's rear-wheel drive as it was before. Goes on sale in the spring of 2022. Ryan, we are going to buy one. Did you talk to Gabe Shenhar, who is kind of in charge of getting our test cars? Are we going to buy one for sure?
He said we were. Obviously, it's gonna take some time for this thing to come out and get situated. It's gonna be probably a little more expensive than they say initially, but we will get one at some point, and we will enjoy testing it, I'm sure. I'm excited.
Did either one of you guys drive the original Z, the 240, 260, or 280 Z?
I wish.
I never was able to, no.
So I got, you know how they say, like, don't meet your heroes? You've heard that saying, like, don't meet your heroes because you're going to be let down. So back when I worked at Road and Track Magazine out in California, when I was a lot younger, one of the guys the PR guys who worked at Nissan at the time, Dean Case, shout out to Dean Case, we were talking about the Z, and he said, hey, well, we've got one in our museum or whatever, in their lobby or something. I can bring one by. And so we brought an old Z by for a couple days for us to drive. And I had never really driven an old car before in the modern times. And I honestly was a bit let down, but that was the younger me. Like, now I think I would appreciate it, but it wasn't that fast. And the whole car, the whole car like shifted. Every time you'd hit the gas pedal, the whole car would kind of shift slightly. And then when you let back off the gas pedal, it would shift back the other way. And I was honestly a little bit let down, but I think I was too young to appreciate the old car. And now I would love to drive it because I'm not, back then everything was like, it's got to be the latest, the greatest, the fastest, whatever. But as you age, I hate to admit that I'm aging, I think you appreciate, older things in the way they were, and just the mechanicalness. That's a very mechanical car, and modern cars have gone a little bit away from that. You know what I mean? So
I totally agree with you, Monty. But I still feel spoiled at times. We're spoiled because to drive all these new cars, and it's fairly refined. I mean, I miss the mechanical stuff. I totally agree. But when you get a turbocharged 6-cylinder car now, and it absolutely flies. I mean, it could be just a normal car, and it absolutely flies. And it's it's quiet and smooth. And then you get into these old cars that are supposed to be sports cars, but they were. Yeah. It's right. It's hard to kind of recognize, like, all right, this thing was actually awesome in its day, and you have to appreciate that. But we're spoiled. I mean, cars are still, we just tested a Corvette, the C8 Corvette, and it absolutely flies. So like I'm numb to like speed almost, in a sense where like stuff doesn't seem that fast because the bar keeps going up and up and up. And now you drive these older cars that were awesome in their day. You're like, oh man, like you got to
kind of readjust your expectations and driving style. Yeah, you can't just get in a C8 and then go hop in like a C3 Corvette and expect to drive it the same way. It's not.
You got to appreciate it for its era. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's the perfect philosophy, Ryan. You got to appreciate them for what they were in their era. So, real quick before we move on, we're gonna just talk about the Talking Cars donation program. For those of you that may not know, I mentioned it before, but Consumer Reports is a nonprofit organization. Everything that we do is funded by memberships as well as donations. So all the work that we do here at Consumer Reports, including putting out this podcast for you folks, comes from money that we get from you folks out there. Any little bit you can give helps us. You can find more information at cr.org/give Talking Cars. And now let's move on to this week at the test track. And this week we're going to be talking about the 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee L, our first impressions of that. We bought one for our test fleet, so we're excited about that. And basically what the Grand Cherokee L is, it's really the first major update to the Grand Cherokee in 10 years. And we purchased the 3-row version, which is the L. That's what the L stands for. It carries over the same 2 engine choices as before, a 290 horsepower V6, which is what we got in the model that we purchased. And there's also a V8. Both made it to the same carryover 8-speed automatic transmission. Base prices for the Grand Cherokee L go from $36,995 to $58,395. And that's not including the completely ridiculous $1,695 destination charge That's ridiculous. I'm not even going to say any more than that. We bought a 2021 Grand Cherokee L limited 4x4 with admittedly $7,575 in options. That does include the trailer tow package, which has the rear load leveling suspension, the luxury tech group 2, which brings leather seats and a surround view camera and some other things. Total cost of our test vehicle, $55,265. Grand Cherokee L, you're looking at, it's going to be competing with things like the Kia Telluride, Hyundai Palisade. These are, other mid-size three-row SUVs, Toyota Highlander, Honda Pilot. Ryan, so now I've given you all the deets on the Grand Cherokee L. Tell us what it's like to drive this new Grand Cherokee and this new Grand Cherokee three-row model.
Yeah, so the L drives like a big Grand Cherokee, right? The steering's a little vague, I thought, but it's kind of fitting for a larger SUV. I think this thing is pretty good size. It almost maybe seems bigger than some of those competitors. I'm not sure exactly, but it feels that way anyway. There's not a lot of body roll. I think it handles itself well, but it's not an exciting car to drive. Where I was discouraged with it a bit was that the engine in this car really, when you step on it, the sound resonates right through the chassis.
Strange sound.
Up into the cabin, and it's like, this is a pretty expensive, like a nicer SUV, and it doesn't feel that way when you really step on the throttle. The noise that comes through is really
it's like this hollow kind of tinny sound.
Yeah, I was a little taken back by that. And it's, if you have it full of people, at one point I had it, loaded up pretty good. And it takes that motor, all of what that motor has to move it along, especially if you're merging onto, a highway or whatever. But it is roomy, I will say that. I mean, I flipped the seats down, I had it loaded up with stuff. It's a big, roomy vehicle. I think, Grand Cherokee owners, regular Grand Cherokee owners if they need a bigger Grand Cherokee, they will go for something like this.
You talk about the engine, Ryan, and it just feels like when it's such a big vehicle, when you start it up, it feels like it should be a V8. And so I sort of, missed that.
Yeah, like
the V6 felt a little bit out of place.
Yeah,
I thought, Alex, though, that I thought the transmission worked pretty well. I thought that up and downshifts were pretty smooth. It was pretty responsive to downshifts. I actually thought the V6 didn't feel completely out of place in terms of its power. Again, Ryan, I didn't drive it loaded up like you did, but I thought it worked okay for that. But you're right, the engine does when you push it, it gets loud. But I totally agree with you, Ryan, on the steering. It's kind of, to me, it's a little too light. I think it turns in quick, and from that, actually took me surprise. Like, it turned in a little quicker than I thought it was going to. But it wasn't a problem. It wasn't like it was too quick. But it's kind of lifeless, and it's a little too light in terms of its effort. But let's get a little more into the ride, Alex. What's your opinion on the ride?
I was a little torn on it. So I think this thing, it really shines when you get it on the highway and you're cruising on like some smoother roads, and it just makes a really good highway kind of family cruiser, that type of thing. When you get it onto more tight, winding roads, I don't think the ride and handling balance is maybe quite as good as it could be. But I geeked out a little bit and started looking into what they did with this vehicle. It's totally new platform, and they redesigned suspension. They're using a lot of aluminum. And they also, kind of similar to what Nissan's been doing, they hard mounted the front subframe rather than mounting everything with bushing. So everything is a lot more stiff. And I think that gets you some of that turn in, but then they softened up the springs. So you end up with this ride that it turns in quick and it handles bumps pretty well. But then when it starts getting, the road is undulating and all that stuff, it gets a little floaty at the same time. So it's this interesting balance there. We couldn't get ours with anything but 20-inch wheels, which I think hurts the ride a little bit. You can get 18s depending on how you spec this thing out, and without trying it ourselves, I would wager that that's probably a better ride. And then one other interesting thing about this thing is if you look at the old Grand Cherokee, this new one, the 3-row version, our configuration, this limited 4x4 with the V6, actually weighs 50 pounds less than a similar, existing Cherokee 2-row. So if you get the same model in the 2, so like Ryan was saying, it's big, right? physically this thing is big and it feels that way, but it's not that heavy, relatively speaking. So it results in kind of an interesting driving experience.
That's interesting, Alex, because in my mind, when I was driving, the first time I drove this, I felt like the previous regular Grand Cherokee, I thought highly of. I think most of us did. We enjoyed driving that. It was a nice car, but it felt more substantial. Some cars have that heft to them, and then it helps to ride and everything. And everything just felt more substantial. I got more of that feeling then than I do with this. This felt a little more. I don't want to say rattly, but it was just that had that edge to it.
No, I'm with you. And when you elongate the body like that, and you put these big wheels on it, and you hard mount some of these things, I think you get a little more. Even if the structure is stiffer in certain areas, I think maybe the whole experience is a little more like jiggly, if you will. What you end up feeling from behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of rattly, I want to get into the interior stuff, but there was a few fit and finish issues here and there. I mean, I thought some stuff was really nice. The gear selector knob, super solid. There's these, I think they're wood panels, or either wood or really good imitation wood panels on the doors and the dash. Lots of that, glossy black trim that so many automakers go into these days. But then there was some egregiously poor panel fits, like on the center console. I thought the steering wheel stalks feel super cheap. And the door pockets completely unlined, glove box completely unlined, center armrest bin completely unlined other than this cheap removable felt base. And I thought that was a little bit of a letdown, especially for a vehicle that is $55,000.
Yeah.
As tested.
That panel where your right, if you were driving, where your right knee would be along the console, it's kind of like a curved panel, and it's like rattle. It's like loose. And it looks like there's a clip missing or something, and it was just poorly fit. And I was taken back by that. I mean, that's it.
The front passenger seat for me just kept rattling. When I would hit a bump, it was like squeaking and rattling. I don't know if any of you guys got that.
Well, I heard something coming from the rear section of the car. I thought maybe it was, the car has the second row sunshades that can go up and down. And I couldn't tell, but it's hard to tell when you're driving by yourself. But I thought maybe it was those just slightly rattling. But so you guys are obviously bigger than me. Alex, let's start with you. How did you fit in it? How was the front seats? How did that work for you? Obviously, it's a big vehicle. You would hope it would work.
Yeah, it worked just fine. I think that's actually probably a strong suit, is driving position and seat comfort and all that stuff. Tons of adjustment, comfy seat. Not like an aggressively bolstered seat or anything, but kind of what you want in this vehicle. It held up over long drives, plenty of space around. I don't think I had any issues. I don't know about you, Ryan, but
yeah, no, I totally agree. The driving position was great for me. The wheel telescopes. Chrysler's pretty good at that. They'll give you a good wheel telescope. Even the back seat was quite roomy. The seat was a little narrow, and it kind of felt like I was hugging the door.
The second row seat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The second row seat. I felt like I was hugging the closer to the door. It's weird, but when the seat's a little narrow, but it's roomy. I was impressed with the room in it, really, which is good. I mean, they're calling it the L, so it has more room, and it definitely does.
Alex, what about infotainment and controls? Something we always talk about here, and one of the big reasons why we talk about it is because we think they should be as simple as possible, so that they don't distract from the driving. It's not that we're stuck in the past; it's that we don't, we know what it's like to be driving and trying to fiddle with something that doesn't make sense. How is Jeep doing from that perspective?
Yeah, like you said, ultimately driving should be priority number one. Messing with stuff is not. So, the previous Uconnect systems were always super simple and just well laid out, easy to navigate, and they really held on to that virtue for a while. But I think this new system, which they're calling Uconnect 5, so their latest version, it retains a lot of like the good organization and easy to navigate and figure out, but they've added a ton of content to this thing. Everywhere you click, it does something new. You can call up features, change the home screen around, and all that stuff is good. It's a little intimidating at first, but I do think that ultimately, if you spend a little bit of time, it's logical. And I almost hate to say this, but it feels like it could use a larger screen size to accommodate everything they've added, because what ends up happening is you end up with a lot of really small text and button, touch areas that just get shrunken down. So might regret saying it, but I feel like it should have maybe a couple inches larger of a screen And then there are just some other kind of oddities throughout, like they put a bunch of switches on the top above the screen. And
I was hoping someone was going to bring that up. I was curious how you guys felt about that.
Okay in theory, but rather than them being on the same plane as the screen, they like made them flat. So it kind of goes up like this, and then the switches are on this dashboard plane. And for me, the glare just hits these switches because they're the shiny black plastic, right? And I missed them completely. And I think like LKA is up there or something, and I couldn't find it for the longest time. So not great. But a lot of other physical buttons and switches elsewhere in the car, which are
yeah,
good.
it's just not as ergonomically correct, to be putting your hand forward and then up and down. You know what I mean? Like as opposed to just going straight ahead.
Yeah.
But I did like that at least I found that active lane management, which I think is their lane departure warning system. But I liked that it was at least there because it meant I could turn it off quickly. Sometimes you have to go through some menus to turn these things off if they're annoying you. When you're on a back road, sometimes these lane systems get a little overly aggressive and are beeping at you or vibrating the steering wheel. Some of the climate controls were a little bit hidden as well by some things, but I thought that all of those buttons they're real physical buttons, not capacitive touch. And I thought that actually the quality of those felt really nice. I thought they looked very nice, and I thought they were quite nice to the touch.
Yeah, agreed. It's just the position that's a little weird.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say we're a little torn on the vehicle. We're going to make our more of a final assessment actually after it gets through our full test program. And we'll kind of do a wait and see as to just how much of an improvement it really is, and where does it stack up against these other mid-size 3-row SUVs. So stay tuned for that, and we'll get you all the good information as soon as we can. We also, just want to make sure you know that we do have a full first drive up as well, written by fellow podcaster Keith Berry, who you sometimes see here on the show. So please check that out at cr.org. And now let's move on to audience questions. I just want to remind everyone, you can send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. And the first question comes from Larry. Larry says, I am currently looking for an electric crossover, and I am considering purchasing a Volvo XC40 Recharge. However, I am worried about it being outpaced by newer models that are coming out in both tech and range. How can I navigate the world of EVs so that my car isn't outdated so soon after purchase? Alex, let's start with you. Do you have any tips and advice for Larry about navigating the EV world?
Yeah, I mean, so in general, I don't think EVs or cars, are any different than any other consumer product that gets updated regularly, right? If we were talking about a combustion engine powered vehicle, next year's model has more power, more features, all these things. So, you can pay attention to this and try to get the best thing you can that's future proof, but ultimately you can only worry about it so much because new things are just going to come along no matter what you do. But to answer Larry's question more specifically, I would just try to find, if you're worried about the range, find something that has, as much range today as you can find or afford. That XC40 Recharge is rated at just over 200 miles. And I think one of the reasons for that is because it's based on a internal combustion vehicle. It's based on the Volvo XC40. Then they turned it into a BEV. So find something that's a dedicated EV, like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 that's coming out, for example. It uses a dedicated platform, or even the Volvo C40 is that way. So I would start there. And then another thing you can do is we're seeing a trend of automakers utilizing an 800 volt charging system, or just vehicle architecture, really. 400 volt is more typical. And what that means basically is it enables faster charging. So as more high, power chargers come up in the future and are placed elsewhere, you'll be able to get a higher charge rate of those vehicles. So I think Porsche kind of came out with this first, but more mainstream vehicles like the Hyundai that I mentioned or Kia's EV6 are going to use this 800 volt architecture. So that could be one way to maybe get ahead of where the market goes.
Great points. And Larry, also, we constantly update a story that we have up on our website, consumerreports.org, about EVs that are coming soon. It's called Hot New Electric Cars That Are Coming Soon. That should help keep you and everyone else in the loop for all the latest EVs that are heading your way. So please check that story out and check back. It's almost like every few weeks we're updating that story. So please keep an eye on that.
It's kind of that's a good question in the sense that like it's almost like when you buy a computer or some sort of electronic like a phone, it's like outdated so fast because the technology is going so rapidly. I understand his frustration with that. Yeah.
Well, that's why I tell people that like, why do you have so many bicycles? Well, my mountain bikes, it's 2 years old. It's out of date.
That's true, actually.
Can't go fast enough.
It's partially true. Maybe I just need to
you're out of date.
I'm out of date. I need to go. I just need to ride faster. That's all. I don't need a new bike.
Don't blame the tool. It's the operator.
Blame the tool. Blame the tool right here. Okay, let's move on to Steve from California. Steve says, this is an interesting question too. Not too long ago, I bought a brand new Lexus RX, but right after I bought it, I noticed I would get nauseous every time I drove it due to the new car smell. I tried various things like putting baking soda in the car, keeping the windows down, but nothing seemed to work, and I sold the car after a few months. Has CR ever looked into whether that new car smell is toxic? What is the best way to mitigate it? And so, Steve, we actually did look into this several years ago, and that smell is it's volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, which are off-gassing from vinyl dashboards, other interior pieces, combined with the adhesives that are in the car to keep everything together. And, the reality is some cars are worse than others. Studies have found that new vehicles can have between 30 to 250 types of these VOCs. So now one thing is, it appears as though, time and ventilation can resolve this. For instance, a car that has been on a dealer lot for a few weeks may have less odor than one that, just got delivered off the tractor trailer. So it's possible, Steve, that, if you had held onto your RX for maybe a couple more months beyond what you did, that maybe it would have been fine after that. But here's something interesting to think about. And so according to the Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Foundation, an odor is not inherently good or bad. It's the emotional response we pair with an odor that is the determining factor. So I thought that was just something interesting. I think basically saying that we all, odors affect all of us different ways. But certainly it's totally get, where Steve's coming from. And it's too bad that he had to sell his vehicle.
Clearly, it's different, right? Some people like the smell, and that's evident by the fact that you can go buy an air freshener that's like new car smell or something like that, right? So it goes one of two ways, I guess.
And we as everyone knows, we drive new cars all the time, and they do all have a little bit of a different smell to them. So, and obviously sometimes they different materials that the manufacturers use are going to affect some people different ways. But just keep in mind that over time and ventilation could potentially help get rid of that smell. So if you're not liking it right now, maybe give it a few weeks, a few months, maybe you'll be okay with it. Let's move on to Chris from Clinton, New York. Chris says, I drive a 2017 Honda Civic Si, and although I've always been okay with all-season tires, my new job requires commuting on some hilly country roads. I'm ready to invest in snow tires and thought it would be a good opportunity to get a higher profile set with some smaller wheels for winter potholes. I was surprised some of the recommended models were not just smaller diameter wheels, but also narrower tires. How do I find out which size tires are appropriate for my car if I change wheel sizes from 18-inch to 17-inch? Ryan, you're our tire guy. So what can you say to Chris here?
Well, it's a great question. And I'm 100% in favor of doing what he's doing. Get some winter tires. And if you go to a smaller wheel size, you can get, when he says a higher profile. When you go to a smaller wheel size, you have to increase the amount of sidewall and the rubber the tire has to maintain an overall diameter, same overall diameter, right? So there's a few things here. The original tires that came on his car, I did a little research. It's an 18-inch wheel. Like he says, it's a 235/40 R18, so it's got a lower sidewall and it's a little bit wider. That car from the factory has a certain air pressure that holds that car up, each tire, to carry that load. If you're going to go to a smaller wheel and more sidewall, you have to keep the same volume of air to maintain that same air pressure to carry the load. So as you go, if you went from a this wider tire, anybody that can't see my stupid hands right now, I'm trying to show a cross section of a tire. When you go from that wider lower profile to a a higher profile tire, the tire's going to get the volume's going to that's to keep the volume the same. The tire's going to get narrower. Otherwise, you'd end up with, if you kept it the same width and you just got taller, you'd actually end up with too much tire for that load, and you'd have to then change the air pressure to get to wear properly and perform properly. So it is. You will notice that when you go to that we call that a -1. So you're taking an inch off of your wheel size. You're adding some rubber. You will notice that the tire will get narrower. The same thing happens when you plus size. If you went from a 17 to the 18, you have to go now wider to get that volume of air, because the volume of air holds the load. Is for that specific tire holds a certain load. So and it also, it's the other side to this is a narrower winter tire generally does better in winter conditions, in snow and ice. It cuts through the snow a little better than a wide tire, where the wide tire kind of plows over it, and it's not as effective. So you'll notice a lot of winter tires, even if they're the same, similar sizes to an all-season tire, they have sharper cut edges to them. The sidewalls are sharper, and they're even a little bit narrower, and that's by design. So. So don't be surprised. That's what you're seeing, that because of the it's all comes down to load and maintaining that overall tire diameter. So there's all that, right? That's the phenomenon that's happening. That's why the tire gets narrower. I went ahead and I actually looked it up for you. A great tool to use is TireRack.com. Tire Rack's amazing. They list the size that your car came with originally. If it came with more than one size, it'll list them. You have to kind of know at least what wheel size you had. In this case, there's only one 18-inch size. But in that, when you go into that layer of Tire Rack, it'll say optional sizes, and it will, even if it didn't come in that size originally, and it will show you other sizes that will fit. So there is a 17-inch size, because the other thing you have to worry about is brake rotor clearance. You can only put such a certain size wheel on a car down to a certain size, otherwise you'll hit the brakes and whatnot. So you can put a 17-inch on this car. It would be a 225/50 R17. If you didn't have Tire Rack, you'd have to look in we have these special tire books that give all the specs and load capacities and stuff. It gets complicated. So your best, well, you did the best thing. You asked me, and I did it for you. So a 225/50 R17 will be the size that will fit. You have to get wheels also, obviously, that are 17-inch wheels. I'm all for it, and good luck.
Well, we learn new tire stuff every week with Ryan Pizlakowski. I think we're going to have to start a segment here, This Week in Tires with Ryan Pizlakowski or something. I'll work on it this week, and I'll try and come up with a name for that segment, okay?
Very good.
Okay, this question comes from Jason from Toronto. Jason says, CR currently has the various Toyota RAV4 models ranked in road test score, with the Prime as number 1, followed by the hybrid version, then the standard gas engine model. I'm interested in purchasing one. So from an enthusiast driver's perspective, what order would you put them in terms of being fun to drive? It kind of sounds like Jason's trying to make a grown-up decision here. And, our boy is growing up.
The best of one, anyway.
Yeah. So let's start, Alex, with you. If you were to group these RAV4s, would you group them the way CR has them for an enthusiast perspective, or is there another way you would do that?
No, I mean, I got to put the RAV4 Prime at the top, because it mostly for the power, right? When Toyota came out with this thing, you think Toyota plug-in hybrid, it's another Prius or something, but they made it a little bit, dare I say, sporty. They gave it, I think it's got over 300 horsepower, right, between the 4-cylinder and the electric motors. And the thing moves pretty good and takes off the line. It's got all-wheel drive. So, it might not be the handling star that everybody hoped that it might be when they learned about some of these specs. It's kind of drives more like a regular RAV4 in terms of handling and cornering and that type of stuff. But the power is there, and that makes it fun. And at least personally, you get to kind of play around with the plug-in hybrid aspect of it, right? You get to choose whether you want it to be in hybrid mode or electric mode, or, charging up the battery or using it. So if you like that kind of thing, it gives you something to, mess around with and appreciate. So I got to put the Prime at the top. I have less experience with the other two RAV4, so I'll lean on you guys for that. But I guess I would just imagine that the hybrid version is going to give you a little more power. So.
Okay, Ryan, what about you? Same order as Alex, and what's your input on the hybrid versus the non-hybrid?
So yeah, I totally agree with Alex. I mean, the Prime had a ton of power, and aside from all of that, though, the interior, it rode better. It was just a nicer car, a nicer package completely. I mean, that goes without saying. I'll say in general, none of these RAV4s are sporty. In my eyes, okay,
that's a good point.
No, they're not, and I would challenge him to. I would suggest to him rather to go drive a Mazda CX-5, and that's a much sportier, more fun to drive car all day long. No hybrid or plug-in hybrid there, just a regular engine, but it's just way more fun to drive. Between the two, the hybrid and the regular RAV, the gas RAV, the hybrid's still nicer. Handling wise, the hybrid's a little heavier, but I think it's still nicer. It still handles well enough. The regular RAV, the motor, the powertrain in that was with the CVT was annoying. It was just I couldn't drive it.
Exactly, and that was what the hybrid did versus the regular RAV4 is it calmed down that really loud engine. The RAV4 almost has a surprisingly loud engine. Like we're like, is this how it's coming from the factory? And it really is that loud. And the hybrid takes care of a lot of that. Not all of that, but absolutely, I think you guys are spot on. Go with the Prime, or maybe even better, maybe think about something else entirely like the Mazda CX-5 if you're looking for that enthusiast perspective. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. If you want to learn more about the cars and the topics that we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next week.
The front driving position was the front driving position, as if you could drive from the rear. The driving position
that might happen soon.
Yeah, well.